Hello everyone and welcome to all my dear students. Today is your history class, right? Today in this class we are going to talk about scope of population education and environment education. Before to discuss about scope of population education and environment education, my dear students, today once again I want to revise some of the important portion that we had already discussed in our previous class. And my dear students, in our previous class, we had discussed about scope of health education, right? Scope of health education. Now, my dear students, now we are going to talk about the scope of population education and the scope of environment education. All right. Okay. Okay, my dear students, first of all, we are going to discuss from the scope of population education. And after the scope of population education, we'll talk about the scope of environment education. All right. Okay, my dear students, you can see on the slide there are different scope of population education. All right. Okay. First of all, I'm going to read the scope of population education, and after that, one by one, we'll discuss about that the scope of population education. Okay, my dear students, you can see in the slide the first scope of population education, that is the demography and demographic characteristics. The first scope of population education. All right. And the second scope of population education is determinants of population change. That's the second scope of population education. And the third scope of population education is consequences of rapid population growth. That's the third scope of the population education. And after then, the next scope of population education is human sexuality. And finally, the next scope of population education is planning for the future. Okay. Anyway, my dear students, now we are going to discuss the different scope of population education. Now let's start from the first scope of population education. Okay, the first scope is demography and demographic characteristics. Okay, first of all, my dear students, I am going to define the meaning of demography. What is the meaning of demography? Demography means the study of human population in a systematic and scientific way. That's a definition of demography. It means study of human population. Study of human population in a systematic and scientific way. That's the definition of demography. And my dear students, once again, you can see the first scope of population education. After demography, there is and demographic characteristics. And demographic characteristics indicate the population size, population distribution, population composition, etc. Demographic characteristics means demographic characteristics indicate the size of population, distribution of population, composition of population, etc. That's the meaning of the demographic characteristics. All right. So the first the first scope of population education is demography and demographic characteristics. The first scope of population education. All right. Okay. After then, my dear students, once again, you can see in the same slide the second scope of population education. The second scope is determinants of population change. Determinants means else to find out. And my dear students, there are the three factors that helps to determine the population change. They are birth, date, and migration. It is a very simple, very easy. Birth, date, and migration are the three factors that helps to determine the population size. And my dear students, as we all know that birth increase the population, date decrease the size of population, and migration increase as well as decrease the size of population. So determinants of population change means determines meanings of population change. For that, you should have to remember the three factors: birth, date, and migration. Birth, date, and migration are the three factors that helps to determine or find out the size of population in a certain place or in a certain area. right? So once again, I want to repeat: birth, death, and migration. Birth, as we all know, that increase the size of population; death, decrease the size of population; and migration, increase in a new place in destination and decrease in the origin. So that the three factors, birth, date, and migration, are the three factors that helps to determine the size of population in a certain place or in a certain area. Okay, so determinants of population change is also one of the scope of population education. All right. Okay, and after then, my dear students, you can see the third scope of population education, right? So third scope is consequences of rapid population growth. Consequences means result. And my dear students, as you all know that rapid population growth is one of the major problem of Nepal. Not only Nepal, in the different developing countries, rapid population growth rate is a major problem. And my dear students, we all know that because of the rapid population growth rate, we face different types of problems, different obstacles. Yeah, because of the rapid population growth, people start to overuse of different resources, misuse of different means and resources. It creates deforestation, as well as the rapid population growth rate invites different natural disaster as well. So that my dear students, rapid population growth rate create negative result. Consequences, just I told you, result. There we steps for negative result because of rapid population growth. So that human beings should control the rapid population growth rate. And if we control the rapid population growth rate, then we can get sufficient means and resources, helps to preserve the environment, helps to minimize different types of pollution if we control rapid population growth rate. So in the consequences of rapid population growth rate, my dear students, we have to conscious that different negative results different negative results occur due to the rapid population growth rate. So to create positive consequences, human beings should be manage the population growth rate. All right. Okay. That's a third scope of population education. And after the third scope of population education, the next scope of population education is human sexuality, the next scope of population education. And while we discuss about the importance of population education in introduction of population education in the previous class, I told you that population education is an multi-dimensional subject matter, right? Population education is known as a multi-dimensional subject matter because population education includes more subject matters, so that population education is one of the multi-dimensional subject matter. And here is the human sexuality, and this human sexuality is also related, linked with the population education. And this human sexuality helps to create safe sexual behavior, about the knowledge of reproduction to the help of the human sexuality, create a positive attitudes towards the sex, human reproduction, reproductive process, etc., to the help of the knowledge of human sexuality. And this human sexuality is also one of the scope of population education. All right. Okay. And after then, my dear students, once again, you can see in the same slide, and the next scope of population education is planning for the future. Planning for the future. That's a next scope of population education. And as you all know that planning is very essential to get success in future. Yeah. And planning also, let's take the example of our one family also. As a senior, your parents, as a father or mother, head especially, they make a certain plan and policy that's to get success in the future, because the future is uncertain. The future is uncertain. So that's why to get success or to get achievement, planning is very essential. Just I told you, we can take the example of our one family. Your parents make a plan, make a plan. That's how to get a success. That's why to prevent from different obstacles for the future reference. So planning is very much important tools that we can get a success in future and for to get a great achievement in the human's life. But my dear students, you can see here in this scope of population education, planning for the future means like the knowledge of family size. And as we all know that there are two sides of family, small and joint size of family. And small size of family is very good, very suitable. That's why, because small size of family helps to create a happy and satisfied family. So planning for the future means, it means parents as a head make a about to plan about the size of family, right? And appropriate age to engage in a married life, appropriate age, suitable age to engage in married life. Yeah. And also the next planning also, like next planning, appropriate age for the conception first conception means which age is suitable to become a first pregnancy. Also planning for the birth spacing, etc. are some of the planning for the future. Because just we are discussing about the scope of population education. Population education means knowledge of population, knowledge how to minimize the size of population, how to manage the population through the help of the population education. So that in planning, just I told you, planning about the size of family, yeah, appropriate age to engage in a married life, and suitable age for the first conception, first pregnancy, body spacing, yeah, and planning for the income and expenditure in the family are some of the useful, very essential planning for the future, so that this planning for the future is also one of the scope of population education. All right, okay, these are some of the important scope of population education. And my dear students, you can see now the next slide, the scope of environment education. Okay, my dear students, before to discuss about the scope of environment education, just we had discussed the scope of in population education. Okay, before to discuss the scope of environment education, okay, Miss Nisa, are you listening to me? Miss Nisa, are you listening to me? Okay, otherwise, Mr. Subham, are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Subham, just we discussed the scope of population education, right? There are some scope of population education. Okay, can you tell me what are the different scope of the, first of all, okay, do you have any confusion about the scope of population education?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay, if you haven't any problem, okay, can you tell me what are the different scope of population education? What are they?
Yes, sir. Demography and demographic characteristics,
Yes.
determinants of population change,
Yeah.
uh, uh, planning for the future,
Yeah.
human sexuality.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Suvam, can you please just brief, just short description of the planning for the future? Can you, what is your view about the planning for the future?
Population education is related to family maintaining family size, proper family size, and proper age at first conception, and
Yes.
proper age at marriage. It is indirectly or directly related to planning for the future.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much, Mr. Subham. Mr. Subham. Okay. And after then, Mr. Redam, are you listening to me? Mr. Redam, are you listening to me? Okay, if not, Miss Rosani, are you listening to me? Miss Rosani.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Miss Rosani, just we discuss the different scope of population education, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you have any confusion about that scope of population education?
Sir, no.
Okay, if not, okay, Miss Rosani, okay, can you tell me what are the different scope of population education? What are they?
Sir, demography and demographic characteristics,
Yes.
and planning for the future,
Yes.
and
Yes.
consequence of rapid population growth,
Yes.
determinants of population change.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, can you please short description of consequences of rapid population growth? What is your view about consequences of rapid population growth?
So,
Yeah. Consequences means just I told you result. Yeah. Consequences of rapid population growth. Consequence means a result, and as we all know, because of rapid population growth rate, it creates different negative results. Can you say something negative results of rapid population growth rate? It means
yes,
what are
sir.
the different problems because of the rapid population growth rate? We face different types of problems. Yeah, which types of problems occur due to the rapid population growth rate? Okay. Otherwise, Miss Rosni, are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you tell me? Can you short description of determinants of population change? What is your view about the determinants of population change?
So
Yeah.
nowadays
Yes.
population is growing.
Growing rapidly.
Yes, sir. And
Okay, Miss Rosani, thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much for your view. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. My dear students, and once again, uh, I want to revise consequences of rapid population growth rate and determinants of population change. Just a revision only, my dear students, you have to listen very carefully. Okay. Consequences of rapid population growth. And just I told you, consequences means the result of rapid population growth rate. And I told you that because of rapid population growth rate, it creates different types of problems. Negative result. Consequences means result. And negative results occur due to the rapid population growth rate. Now, negative results means like, for example, overuse of different means and resources, overuse of different means and resources because of rapid population growth rate. It creates deforestation. That's why because of rapid population growth rate, people start to deforest the forest. It creates a deforestation. And also because of rapid population growth rate, we face different types of environmental problems as well because of the rapid population growth rate. So rapid population growth rate invites different negative results, negative consequences, so that we should control the rapid population growth rate. So to control the rapid population growth rate, we should have to minimize the birth rate. And to minimize the birth rate, just title in the planning is in, we should have to make a plan. Planning is very essential to reduce birth rate, to reduce birth rate. Because of the high birth rate, it creates rapid population growth rate, and because of rapid population growth rate, it invites different environmental problems and other problems. So we should have to minimize the birth rate. And to minimize the birth rate, couples, especially the parents, should make a plan to minimize birth rate. And if you minimize the birth rate, it helps to control the rapid population growth rate. Okay. And in case of the determinants of population change, just I told you, determinants means to find out determinants of population change. There are three factors. I told you there are three factors: birth, date, and migration. And birth, date, and migration are the three factors that determine the size of population. Population change means increment or decreasement of the population. Population change, increment or decreasement the size of population. That's the meaning of the population change. So three factors: birth, increase the population; death, decrease the population; migration, increase as well as decrease the size of population. So that birth, date, and migration are the three factors that helps to determine the size of population. That means helps to determine the population change. Population change means increment or decreasement. So birth, date, and migration increase and decrease the size of population size. So that birth, date, and migration are the three factors that determine the size of population. Okay. And after then, my dear students, now after the scope of environment, sorry, population education, now we are going to discuss about the scope of environment education. And okay, to before to discuss the scope of environment education, okay, my dear students, once again you have to remember, let's conscious, let's remind the introduction to environment. In our previous class, we had already discussed about the introduction of environment. And while we discuss about the introduction to environment, in the previous class, there was mentioned one of the chart that the chart indicates the three factors, the three aspects: physical, biological, and socio-cultural aspect. My dear students, once again, I want to repeat. In our previous class, while we discussed about the introduction to environment, right? Introduction to environment at a time while we discuss about the introduction to environment, and there was mentioned one of the chart, and the chart clarified the three parts, the three aspects of environment: the physical aspect, biological, and socio-cultural aspect. So now for the scope of environment education, just if you remember the portion of previous class, that means if you remind the introduction to environment, then we can easily explain, we can easily describe the different scope of environment education. And on the slide, you can see there are mentioning the different scope of environment education. These are only the repeated, nothing new. So there are the three scope of environment education. That's a physical aspect, second biological, and the third one is the socio-cultural aspect. So for the scope of environment education, now I want to interact, we are going to interact for the scope of environment education, because just I told you this is the revision portion, nothing new. This is a revision of introduction to environment. So for the scope of environment education, now for a few minutes we are going to interact, we are going to share our views, opinions, thought about the scope of environment education. All right, okay. For the interaction, first of all, I want to request Mr. Shivam Yadav. Are you listening to me? Mr. Yadav. Okay, otherwise, Mr. Pranab. Are you listening to me? Mr. Pranab. Otherwise, Mr. Okay, Miss Srijana Limbu. Are you listening to me?
Yes,
Miss
sir.
Srijana Limbu. Are you listening to me? Okay, Miss Srijana, just I told you, you can see the slide also. There is a scope of environment education, and there are the three scope of environment education: physical, biological, and socio-cultural. And just I told you, this is just nothing new. This is a revision, just a revision portion. In our previous class, while we discussed the introduction to environment, we had already discussed about the physical, biological, and socio-cultural. So okay, can you tell, let's share our view about the physical aspect. Do you know, okay, about the physical aspect? Miss Srijana, are you listening to me? Okay, can you share us about the physical aspect? Okay, otherwise, can you share us about the biological aspect, Miss Srijana? Okay, otherwise it's okay, Miss Srijana. Okay, thanks, thank you. Okay, Miss Nisa, are you listening to me? Miss Nisa. Okay, otherwise, Mr. Pranal Snit, are you listening to me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Pranal, just you can see the slide, the scope of environment education. There are three scope of environment education, and just I told you, just this is a revision, revised portion only, right? So there are the three
Yes.
scope of environment: physical, biological, and socio-cultural. So can you share us about the physical aspect?
Physical aspect.
Yeah.
Physical aspect simply refers to the non-living aspects around us, such as land, air, water, etc. Uh,
Yes.
our
Very good.
surrounding is the non-living organisms around our surrounding can be described as physical aspects. These physical aspects can help us. These physical aspects are the basis of any environment. Uh,
Yes.
every environment has land, air, water. Without the physical aspect, we can't
Yes.
consider something an proper environment.
Okay, Mr. Pranal, thank you so much. So good. You thanks for your view. Okay. And just my dear students, once again, okay, you can see in the slide, just Mr. Florin Bosnet share us about the physical aspect. And physical means, my dear students, just we have to physical indicates different non-living factors. Physical, because environment, the definition of environment means environment, simply environment means surrounding area that containing both living and non-living factors. So physical indicates a different non-living factors. So this is a very very simple about the scope of environment education, just I told you. And if we know the definition of environment, then we can easily create the scope of environment education. So physical means different non-living factors. Now, my dear students, you can take some examples of non-living factors like air, water, soil, mountain rocks. There are different examples of different non-living factors. So to know about a physical extract, just I told you, you can take some examples of non-living factors and what is the use, what are the different uses of different non-living factors in our life. We can also create a relationship between the different non-living factors and the living factors as well. So my dear students, physical indicates the different non-living factors, so you can take some examples as well. All right, okay. And after the physical, the next one is the biological aspect. Okay, now to share about the biological aspect, once again, I want to request Mr. Subham. Are you listening to me, Mr. Subham?
Yes, sir.
Okay, boy, once again, you can see the slide. Just Prolon Bosnet share us about the first one, scope of environment education as a physical aspect. And the second one, you can see here the biological aspect. Okay, what is your view about the biological aspect? Can you tell me something about the biological aspect?
Mm, Biological aspects includes plants, animals,
Yes.
interrelationship between plants and animals, and the life processes of them. And
Yes.
under the environment education, we learn about the interrelationship between them and how to protect the plants and other animals in our surroundings.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for your view, Mr. Subham. Okay, just Subham share us about the scope of the environment education second, biological aspect. And biological means just opposite physical. Physical means non-living factors, and biological indicates the different living factors. Now we can take some example of living factors like different plants and animals, birds, human beings, different microorganisms, etc. are some of the examples of biological aspect. So my dear students, for your easiness, you have to remember biological, these different living factors, and physical, different non-living factors. And my dear students, as we all know that, what are the different examples of living and non-living factors? And my dear students, as we all know that living and the different non-living factors are interrelated each other. And in our previous class, we had already discussed interrelationship between the population, environment, and health by including physical aspect, biological, sociocultural, science and technological aspect, political aspect, economic aspect, yeah, to verify three terms: health, population, and environment are interrelated is other. All right, okay. And after the biological aspect, the third scope of environment education is now socio-cultural aspect. Now, okay, this socio-cultural aspect includes different social norms, values, tradition, festivals, lifestyle, customs, etc. And as we all know that Nepal is rich in culture, and as we all know that we are from the different societies, and in our one society there are certain norms and values. That means there are certain so rules and regulation, and in our society we should follow the certain social norms and values, that's why to adjust in the society. And we celebrate different types of festivals, we have our one culture tradition festivals in our one society. So socio culture aspect indicates the different social norms and values, those are festivals, traditions, lifestyle, temples, Gumba, Bihar, etc. Some of the example of socio-cultural aspect. And my dear students, just I told you that we are also the different members from the different societies, and just I told you we have certain social norms and values, certain rules and regulation, and we should have to follow the certain norms and values in our one society for the adjustment. And as you all know that, just I told you, temples, different temples, Gumba, Bihars are located in our one society, and we should have to preserve the different party, Powa, Gumba, Bihar, and different religious places also, different religious sites also, one of the example of socio-cultural aspect. So this socio-cultural aspect is also one of the scope of environment education. So, my dear students, uh, there are three scope of environment education, right? Three scope of environment education, that is a physical, biological, and socio-cultural aspect. Okay, my dear students, now once again I am going to conclude of scope of population education and the scope of environment education. Once again, my dear students, you listen very carefully. I am going to conclude the scope of population education and scope of environment education. So, dear students, if we know the scope of population education and the scope of environment education, and just I told you, first of all, you have to remember, you have to conscious what is the introduction to population, introduction to population education. And if we know the introduction, overall the introduction of population and population education, then we can easily create, we can easily understand what are the different scope of population education. And just in this class, we had discussed scope of population is like a demography first. And just demography, just I told you, study of human population, study of human population. And to study the human population, population education is very essential, right? Population education is very essential because to study the human population. So the first scope, there is a population, yeah, and second, the determinants of population change. And just I told you, determinants of population change means three factors, my dear students. You have to point out, you have to remember the three factors: birth, death, and migration are the three factors that helps determine the population change. Population change means helps to change the size of population. That increase or decrease the size of population. Birth increase the population, death decrease the population, and migration increase as well as decrease the size of population. So determination of population change is directly or indirectly linked with the scope of population education, right? And also after then, consequences of rapid population growth rate. So my dear students, rapid population growth rate, that's a major problem of Nepal. Different problems arise due to the rapid population growth rate. We face different environmental problems, shortage of different means and resources, shortage of different natural resources, overuse of different resources. That's why, because of the rapid population growth rate, so that we should minimize the birth rate, we should control the rapid population growth rate, right? And after the human sexuality, the next scope, just I told you, and the last, also the planning for the future is also one of the scope of population education. And after then, population education, we had discussed about the scope of environment education. And for the scope of environment education, just I told you that to to remember the scope of environment education, just you have to remember what is the definition of environment, my dear students. Just you have to remember what is the definition of environment. And if you know the definition of environment, then we can easily know what are the different scope of environment education. And just I tell you, physical, biological, and socio-cultural aspect. And these three aspects are, and just I told you in the previous class, we had discussed the introduction to environment. And while we discussed the introduction to environment, there was one of the chart, and in that chart mentioning the three parts: physical, biological, and socio-cultural aspect. So in physical, biological, and socio-cultural aspect, my dear students, just you have to mention some examples of physical, Biological, what are the examples of different? Physical means non-living factors, and biological different living factors. You can take some examples of different living factors. And finally, socio cultural aspect, some example of socio cultural aspect, different social norms and values, tradition, festival, lifestyle, temples, religious sites, etc. are some of the examples of socio cultural aspect. All right, okay. My dear students, just I we had discussed the scope of population education and environment education. Okay, all of you, thank you so much for your